Riverbend Rendezvous, an alphabet sweetheart's romance, written by Susanne Ash. Please like and subscribe. Chapter 1. Skye. Perfect morning for a river adventure, I call out to the group of tourists clustered near the water's edge, my voice carrying the practiced enthusiasm that's kept free Skye kayak adventures afloat for 3 years. The irony of that phrase isn't lost on me. Barely afloat is more accurate these days. I adjust my faded bandana and flash what I hope looks like a confident smile. 6 customers today. 6. Last summer, I would have had twice that number by 8 in the morning. But I push the worry down where it belongs, buried deep beneath layers of determination and stubborn pride. The river is running beautifully today, I continue, gesturing toward the gentle current that catches the early morning light like scattered diamonds. Water level's perfect, temperature is a comfortable 72 degrees, and we've got about 4 hours of pristine wilderness ahead of us. Mrs. Caldwell from Charlotte adjusts her oversized sun hat and peers nervously at her bright yellow rental kayak. "You're sure this is safe?" My daughter said I should try something new for my 60th birthday, but I'm starting to think a spa day would have been wiser. I laugh, the sound genuine this time. "Mrs. Caldwell, by the time we're done today, you're going to be planning your next adventure. I promise." I tap the waterproof camera hanging from my neck. "And I'll have the photos to prove you conquered the river." The camera is a recent addition to my gear, something I picked up when I realized how much my clients love having proof of their adventures. Life's too beautiful not to capture, I tell myself, though sometimes I wonder if I'm better at documenting other people's moments than actually living my own. I blink away a sudden wave of doubt and focus on checking life jackets and adjusting paddle lengths. 3 years since I walked away from my corporate job, and sometimes I still wonder if I made the right choice. But this river, these waters where I taught myself to find peace, is where I feel most like myself. Every time I dip my paddle into the current, I'm proving that I can build something lasting, something that's truly mine. "All right, everyone, let's get you settled in your boats," I say, wading into the shallows. The cool water seeps through my quick-dry leggings, and I automatically reach down to touch the delicate fern tattoo that wraps around my ankle, a reminder of growth, resilience, new beginnings. As I help Mr. Whitaker from Asheville position his paddle correctly, I catch a glimpse of a familiar logo on a kayak trailer across the river. Dawson River Tours. My jaw tightens involuntarily. Reid's probably leading a group twice this size right about now, with his perfectly organized equipment and his 5-star reviews that seem to multiply like rabbits. Not that I'm keeping track. "Miss Morgan?" Mrs. Caldwell's voice pulls me back to the moment. "How long have you been running tours?" 3 years this October, I answer, helping her adjust her grip. I started Free Skye after I left my corporate job, decided life's too short to spend it in a cubicle when you could be out here instead. What I don't mention is how I liquidated my 401k to buy this equipment, or how I've been living on ramen and determination for the past 6 months while my savings dwindled, or how every canceled booking feels like a tiny failure, a crack in the foundation of the life I've fought so hard to build. "Good for you," Mr. Whitaker says with genuine admiration. "Takes guts to start your own business." "Takes something," I mutter under my breath, then louder, "Okay, everyone ready to paddle? We'll start easy, just getting a feel for the water." I slide into my own kayak and push off from the sandy bank. The familiar embrace of the river welcomes me instantly. Here, surrounded by the gentle lap of water against my hull and the rustle of cottonwoods overhead, I remember why I chose this life. "Follow my lead," I call back to the group, "and remember, the river has its own rhythm. Don't fight it, dance with it." As we glide downstream, Mrs. Caldwell's nervous laughter gradually transforms into delighted whoops. Mr. Whitaker starts pointing out a great blue heron perched on a fallen log. A young couple from Tennessee takes turns snapping photos of each other with their phones. This is why I do it. These moments when the river works its magic, when people remember what it feels like to be awed by something bigger than themselves. When I watch a 60-year-old woman discover she's braver than she thought, or see a stressed-out accountant forget about spreadsheets for a few hours. But as we round the bend toward the old swimming hole where I'll let everyone rest and explore, I can't shake the numbers running through my head. 6 bookings this week, 12 last week. The equipment loan payment due next Friday, and the insurance renewal notice sitting unopened on my kitchen counter. I snap a photo of Mrs. Caldwell grinning as a butterfly lands on her paddle, then lower the camera and grip my paddle tighter. Every stroke is a declaration that I belong here, that I can make this work. Every tour is proof that the life I've chosen, the stability I've finally created for myself, is worth fighting for. Even if some days it feels like I'm paddling upstream against a current that's stronger than I am. The community center parking lot buzzes with organized chaos as Juniper Falls comes together for the river cleanup. I adjust my mesh bag of supplies and paste on my most enthusiastic smile, the one I've perfected for difficult clients and overdue bill collectors. Skye. Natalie Quinn strides toward me with a clipboard and steaming coffee. Her photographer's eye for detail shows in how she's organized this event, clearly marked supply areas and volunteers sorting into groups with military precision. Morning, Natalie. This turnout is incredible. Ben really outdid himself mapping the cleanup routes, she says, gesturing toward a poster board covered in detailed river sections. He knows every bend and backwater better than anyone. We've got everything from the main channel to those tricky tributaries that collect the most debris. I study Ben Holloway's thorough work. Each section has been marked with difficulty levels, estimated cleanup time, and safety notes. Looks like you've thought of everything. We try. Natalie's smile is warm but tired. Between Ben's mapping and all these willing volunteers, we should be able to cover more ground than ever before. That's when I hear it, the easy laughter that makes my shoulders tense involuntarily. I don't need to turn around to know Reid Dawson is working his charm on another group of volunteers, but I glance over anyway. He's exactly what I expected. Sandy hair catching the morning light, that confident presence as he demonstrates proper paddle grip to a fascinated audience. A small cluster hangs on his every word while he explains something about river currents, his hands moving in smooth, practiced gestures. Reid knows this river system better than anyone, Mrs. Turner says with obvious admiration, been guiding people through these waters since he was practically a teenager. Of course he has. Born and raised here, probably learned to paddle before he could walk, inherited a business with an established reputation. Some people get handed everything on a silver platter. His safety record is impeccable, another volunteer adds. My nephew went on one of his tours last month and raved about it for weeks. I grip my mesh bag tighter and focus on Natalie, who's watching the scene with an amused expression. Reid's wearing a faded Dawson River Tours t-shirt that somehow looks effortlessly perfect, and he has that easy way of making everyone feel like they're the most important person in the room. Show off. As if sensing my attention, Reid glances in my direction and raises his hand in a friendly wave. For a split second, our eyes meet across the crowded parking lot and something flickers in his expression. I can't tell if it's surprise or just curiosity. I immediately turn back to the map on the poster board, pretending to study the route markings with intense fascination. The last thing I need is Reid thinking I was watching him. The Riverbend section looks challenging, I comment to Natalie, pointing to an area marked with extra warning symbols. Lots of debris accumulation there. That's definitely going to require our most experienced people, Natalie agrees. Some of these areas haven't been properly cleaned in years. I nod, still very much not looking at where Reid is now answering questions from an elderly man who seems nervous about the whole undertaking. There's something almost gentle about the way he listens and responds, taking time to reassure the volunteer and explain what to expect on the water. Not that I'm paying attention to his technique or anything. Well, I say, shouldering my bag more securely, wherever you need me, I'm ready to get started. Perfect. Natalie checks her watch. Just waiting for a few more volunteers to arrive, then we can get everyone organized. As she walks away to greet newcomers, I find myself standing alone near the supply table, very carefully not watching Reid finish his impromptu safety demonstration. The morning air carries the sound of his laughter mixing with the excited chatter of volunteers, and despite myself, I have to admit he seems genuinely good with people. which doesn't change the fact that he's still my competition, or that his seemingly effortless success probably comes from having every advantage handed to him since birth.
Chapter 2. Reid. I spotted Skye the moment she pulled into the parking lot, though I pretended to be engrossed in explaining paddle techniques to the group of volunteers gathered around me. 3 years of living in the same small town, and I still haven't figured out how to have a normal conversation with her without putting my foot in my mouth. She's wearing a faded ball cap, pulled low over her eyes, and a tank top that shows off the kind of lean muscle that comes from years of serious paddling. There's something about the confident way she moves through the crowd that draws my attention like a magnet, even when I'm trying to focus on Mrs. Patterson's concerns about tipping over. The key is to keep your center of gravity low, I explain, demonstrating the proper sitting position while part of my brain tracks Skye's progress toward the information table. And remember, if you do end up in the water, your life jacket will keep you safe while you swim to shore. Mrs. Patterson nods nervously, but my attention drifts as Skye stops to talk with Natalie. Even from this distance, I can see the animated way she gestures when she's interested in something. There's an energy about her that's impossible to ignore, like she's plugged into some internal power source the rest of us don't have access to. "What about the current?" asks Jim, one of the college-aged volunteers. "How strong is it?" "Manageable," I answer automatically, then force myself to focus on the conversation instead of watching Skye study Ben's route map with the intensity of someone planning a military campaign. The water's running steady, but not aggressive. Perfect conditions for cleanup work. I've been doing these safety briefings since I was 16, taking over more and more responsibilities as Dad's health declined. The routine should be second nature by now, but somehow Skye's presence makes me aware of every word I'm saying, like she might be listening and judging my technique, which is ridiculous because she's clearly not paying any attention to me at all. "Reid knows these waters better than anyone," Mrs. Turner says with the kind of confidence that comes from watching someone grow up in a small town. "His daddy taught him everything there was to know about guiding on this river." The familiar weight of expectation settles on my shoulders. Dad's legacy, the family business, the responsibility of living up to a reputation I inherited rather than earned. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to just start fresh somewhere new, to build something that was entirely my own. But those thoughts feel disloyal, so I push them aside and smile at the group. My father was a good teacher. Safety first, enjoyment second, everything else comes after that. As I'm answering another question about water temperature, I catch Skye glancing in my direction. For a moment, our eyes meet across the crowded parking lot, and I raise my hand in what I hope looks like a casual, friendly wave. She immediately turns away, suddenly fascinated by something on the route map. I try not to let that sting. Skye Morgan has been keeping her distance since the day she arrived in Juniper Falls, and I've never been able to figure out if it's personal or if she just doesn't trust anyone enough to let them get close. "Excuse me for a minute," I tell the group, then make my way over toward the supply table. It's a strategic move that happens to put me in Skye's general vicinity without looking like I'm deliberately seeking her out. Up close, she's even more distracting. The ball cap doesn't quite contain the auburn highlights in her hair, and there's a small freckle just behind her left ear that I've somehow never noticed before. She's wearing that beaded bracelet she always has on, and I find myself wondering if there's a story behind it. "Morning, Skye," I say when she's close enough to hear me without my having to raise my voice. She glances up from her gear check, and for a split second, I see something flicker in those green eyes before her guard snaps back into place. "Reid." One word. No smile, no follow-up question, no indication that she wants to continue the conversation. But I'm stubborn enough to try anyway. "Good turnout today," I offer, gesturing toward the crowd of volunteers. "Natalie really pulled this together." She did. Skye's tone is polite but distant, like she's talking to a casual acquaintance instead of someone she's run into at least twice a week for the past 3 years. I should probably take the hint and walk away. But there's something about Skye that makes me want to keep trying, to find the crack in her armor that might let me see who she really is underneath all that defensive energy. "I heard Free Sky's been busy this season," I say, immediately regretting the comment when her shoulders tense. "Business is good," she replies carefully, and I can practically see her weighing whether I'm fishing for information or just making conversation. That's great. Competition keeps us all sharp, right? The words are meant to be friendly, maybe even a little self-deprecating, but I can tell from the way her jaw tightens that she's taken them the wrong way. Again. Right, she says, her tone suggesting the conversation is over. I watch her walk away, wondering why I always seem to say exactly the wrong thing around her. My ex-girlfriend Emma used to say I was too careful, too predictable, that I never took any real risks. Maybe she was right. Maybe that's why Skye always seems to look right through me, like I'm not worth the effort of a real conversation. The sharp tweet of Natalie's whistle cuts through the morning chatter, and I make my way back toward the main group as volunteers gather around the assignment board. I spot Skye standing near the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Thank you all for volunteering your Saturday morning, Natalie calls out, clipboard in hand. We've got teams assigned to different sections of the river, each matched to the difficulty level and cleanup needs. She starts reading off assignments, pairing volunteers with experienced guides for the more accessible areas near the main launch points. Standard stuff. I half listen while mentally reviewing my own gear, assuming I'll get a group of enthusiastic but inexperienced paddlers to shepherd through the easier sections.
For our most challenging area, Natalie continues, her voice taking on a slightly different tone.
The Riverbend section, which includes some tricky currents and years of accumulated debris in hard-to-reach spots, I'm assigning our two most experienced river guides to handle the initial assessment. Something in her phrasing makes me pay closer attention. Initial assessment. Reid Dawson and Skye Morgan, you'll be scouting the upper Riverbend area to map the debris locations and determine the best approach for volunteer teams later this afternoon. Wait, what? My head snaps toward Skye, whose expression mirrors my own surprise. Just the two of us? No group of volunteers to manage, no safety demonstrations or hand-holding. Just Skye and me, alone on the most technically challenging section of river. Natalie, I start, but she's already moving on, her tone brisk and professional. You'll launch from the north access point in 30 minutes. Bins mark the problem areas on your maps, but you know that stretch better than anyone. Take your time, be thorough, and radio back with your recommendations. She hands me a waterproof packet with the route details, and I notice Skye stepping forward, her competitive instincts clearly overriding any reservations she might have about working with me. How long do you estimate for the assessment, she asks, all business. 3 to 4 hours, depending on what you find, Natalie replies. The debris buildup near the old camping area is particularly concerning. We need to know if it's safe for volunteer groups or if we'll need to bring in professional equipment. I study the map Ben's drawn, noting the areas marked with extra warnings. The Riverbend section is beautiful but challenging, with narrow channels and complex currents that require real skill to navigate safely. It's exactly the kind of technical paddling that separates experienced guides from weekend warriors. It's also going to mean spending the better part of the day alone with a woman who seems determined to keep me at arm's length. Any questions? Natalie asks, but she's already turning away, clearly considering the matter settled. Skye and I stand there for a moment, maps in hand, both probably wondering how we ended up here. She recovers first, shouldering her gear bag with a kind of efficient movement that suggests she's made peace with the situation faster than I have. I'll meet you at the north launch in 10 minutes, she says, not quite meeting my eyes. That'll give us time to review the route before we put in. Sounds good, I manage, though my brain is still catching up to the reality of the situation.
Chapter 3. Skye. The north access point is barely more than a muddy pull-off hidden behind a screen of willows, the kind of place only locals know about. I'm already unloading my gear when Reid's truck pulls up, and I try not to notice how he takes a moment to study the put-in before getting out, always assessing, always planning, probably already mentally cataloging every potential hazard between here and our takeout point. Good spot, he says, pulling his kayak from the truck bed with practiced efficiency. Water looks clean. I grunt in response, focused on checking my dry bag seals. If my radio gets soaked when we hit rough water, Natalie will have my head. Which we will, because this stretch of river doesn't mess around. The silence stretches between us as we prepare our boats, broken only by the sound of gear being adjusted, and the gentle whisper of current moving through the shallows. Reid's methodical about everything, from the way he positions his rescue bag to how he tests his paddle grip. I bet he has a checklist somewhere, probably laminated. Ready when you are, I announce, settling into my kayak and pushing off from the muddy bank. The river immediately feels different here. Wilder. The main channel where I run my tourist trips is manicured compared to this, all gentle curves and predictable eddies. But the Riverbend section is what the river looked like before development, back when it could sprawl and meander wherever it wanted. Overhead, cottonwoods and willows form a natural canopy that filters the morning light into shifting patterns on the water. The banks are thick with undergrowth that hasn't been trimmed or maintained, and fallen logs create a maze of obstacles that would terrify most recreational paddlers. Beautiful stretch, Reid comments from behind me, his voice carrying easily across the quiet water. I can see why Ben was concerned about the debris buildup. I paddle harder, pulling ahead just enough to make conversation awkward. I don't want him getting ideas about expanding Dawson River tours into new territory. This section has been untouched for years, and I'd like to keep it that way. Must be tempting, I say without turning around, all this pristine river just waiting to be developed. There's a pause before he responds, long enough that I almost think he didn't hear me. I'm not sure what you mean. Come on, Reid. You can't tell me you haven't thought about it. Add a few access points, clear some of the debris, and suddenly you've got a whole new market of adventure seekers willing to pay premium prices for the wilderness experience. My paddle cuts through the water with more force than necessary, sending ripples spreading toward the banks. The current is stronger here, requiring constant attention to maintain position, but the physical challenge feels good. Honest. That's not why I'm here, he says quietly. Right. I can't keep the skepticism out of my voice. You're just doing this out of the goodness of your heart. Because Reid Dawson is such a dedicated environmentalist. I know I'm being unfair even as the words leave my mouth. Reid's reputation for safety and conservation is solid, and Dawson River Tours has always been more responsible than most outfitters. But something about him brings out my defensive instincts, makes me want to push and prod until I find a crack in that perfect facade. Skye. There's something in his tone that makes me slow my pace slightly. I'm here because Natalie asked for help. Same as you. Sure you are. I navigate around a partially submerged log, noting the way debris has collected on the upstream side, and it has nothing to do with scoping out new opportunities. Why are you here? The question catches me off guard, partly because of how quietly he asks it, partly because I don't have a simple answer, because I need to show potential clients that I'm invested in the community, because Natalie's been supportive of Free Skye since I started, and this is how I pay that back, because I want to belong here the way Reid so effortlessly seems to, like he was born knowing exactly where he fits. Community service, I say finally, which is true enough. That's a lie. The bluntness of his response makes me twist around in my kayak to look at him. Reid's face is serious, focused, and there's something in his blue eyes that suggests he sees right through my deflection. Excuse me? You're here for the same reason I am, he says, matching my pace as we navigate between two fallen trees. Because this river gets under your skin. Because places like this are worth protecting, even if it means working with people you'd rather avoid. Heat flashes through me, part anger, part something else I don't want to examine too closely. I don't avoid people. No? Then why do you act like I've got some communicable disease every time we're in the same room? His directness should irritate me more than it does. Instead, I find myself paddling in silence for a moment, trying to figure out how to answer without revealing more than I'm comfortable sharing. The truth is complicated. Reid represents everything I've been fighting against since I started Free Skye, everything that feels unfair about trying to build something from nothing in a place where some people get handed success on a silver platter. But he's also not quite what I expected him to be, and that uncertainty makes me even more defensive. I don't know what you're talking about, I say finally, steering us into a narrow channel between overhanging branches. Right, he says, and I can hear the dry humor in his voice. My mistake. We round a bend where the river narrows between moss-covered boulders, and I have to focus entirely on reading the water to avoid getting pinned against the rocks. The current here is tricky, full of hidden eddies that can grab your paddle if you're not careful. Debris jam ahead, Reid calls out, his voice cutting through the sound of rushing water. I see it too. There's a massive tangle of logs and branches blocking most of the channel, forcing us into a narrow passage along the right bank. But as we get closer, something else catches my attention. A flash of movement in the tall cottonwoods overhead. Wait, I say, holding up my hand. Do you see that? Reid backpaddles, holding his position while we both study the canopy above us. There. Another movement, and then the distinctive silhouette of a great blue heron perched on a massive nest high in the branches. Rookery, Reid says quietly, understanding immediately, probably been using these trees for years. I pull out my camera, adjusting the settings for the distance and filtered light. Natalie needs to know about this. The cleanup crews can't disturb an active nesting colony. Actually, Reid says, his voice taking on a different quality, great blues are incredibly site-faithful. They'll return to the same trees year after year, often the same nests. This colony could be decades old. I lower my camera, surprised by the knowledge in his tone. You sound like you know something about bird behavior. For a moment, he looks almost embarrassed. I studied biology in college, before I came back to take over the business. The admission hangs between us, unexpected and somehow vulnerable. I try to picture Reid in a classroom, bent over textbooks instead of river maps, and realize I know almost nothing about who he was before he became the reliable tour guide everyone expects him to be. Biology, I say. Makes sense you'd know about wildlife behavior. Yeah, well, he shrugs, but there's something wistful in his expression. Plans change. I want to ask more, but movement in the trees draws my attention back to the rookery. Now that I know what to look for, I can see several large stick nests tucked among the upper branches and the shadows of more herons moving through the canopy. Look at the nest structure, Reid says softly, pointing to the carefully constructed platforms visible high above us. They'll use the same site year after year, adding to it each season. Some of these nests can get enormous. Used to spend a lot of time out here as a kid, he admits. Dad thought I was just messing around on the water, but I was actually documenting wildlife patterns. Had this whole project mapped out for different species, migration routes, nesting behaviors. I study his profile as he watches the heron, noting the way his expression softens when he talks about his research. This is a side of Reid I never would have guessed existed. The scientist buried under the responsible business owner. What happened to the project? Real life. He turns to meet my eyes, and there's something raw in his expression that makes my chest tight. Dad got sick my junior year. Someone had to keep the business running. The simple statement carries the weight of dreams deferred, of choices made out of obligation rather than desire. I recognize something in his tone that echoes my own complicated relationship with expectations and responsibility. I'm sorry, I say, meaning it. It's fine, but the way he says it suggests it's anything but fine. The business is good work, important work, but it's not your work. The words slip out before I can stop them, too honest and too personal for where we are in this conversation. Reid doesn't seem offended. Instead, he looks at me with something that might be gratitude. No, he says quietly. It's not. We sit in comfortable silence for a moment, watching a heron glide down to fish in the shallows below its treetop home, moving with the kind of ancient grace that comes from millions of years of evolution. The debris jam that brought us here suddenly seems less like an obstacle and more like a gift, this glimpse into a world that continues regardless of human plans and business concerns. We should mark this on the map, I say finally, though I'm reluctant to break the spell. Yeah. Reid pulls out his waterproof notebook, making careful notes about the location and colony activity. Natalie will want to reroute the cleanup crews around this whole area. As we prepare to continue downstream, I find myself looking at Reid differently. The careful competence is still there, but now I can see the scientist underneath, the person who chose responsibility over passion and somehow made peace with that choice. Or maybe he hasn't made peace with it at all.
Chapter 4. Reid. A first rumble of thunder rolls across the valley as we're marking the last debris accumulation on our maps. and I glance up to see dark clouds building over the western ridgeline with the kind of speed that means serious weather. We need to find shelter, I say, scanning the banks for options. Mountain storms don't mess around, and being caught on open water in a lightning storm is a mistake that can kill you. Skye follows my gaze to the approaching wall of clouds, her expression shifting from relaxed to alert in an instant. How long do you think we have? 10 minutes, maybe less. I'm already plotting our route in my head, remembering the old railroad bridge that crosses the river about a quarter mile downstream. There's a bridge ahead, covered space underneath. She nods without argument, and we both start paddling with the kind of focused urgency that comes from years of reading weather patterns. The wind picks up as we move, sending ripples across the water's surface and rustling through the canopy overhead. The temperature drops noticeably, that sharp cooling that happens right before a storm hits. I can smell rain in the air, that clean electric scent that makes the hair on your arms stand up. There, I call out, pointing to where the bridge spans the narrow channel ahead of us. It's an old wooden structure, probably built for logging operations decades ago, with weathered timbers and a small gravel beach tucked beneath the upstream side. The first fat raindrops hit the water as we paddle toward the shelter. I beach my kayak on the narrow strip of sand and gravel, then help Skye pull hers up beside mine as the wind picks up. Perfect timing, she says, and we scramble up the small embankment to the dry space beneath the bridge structure. Then the sky opens up. The sound is incredible, like standing inside a drum while someone pounds on it with hammers. Rain hammers against the wooden planks above us, creating a thunderous roar that drowns out everything else. Lightning flashes, illuminating the bridge timbers in stark black and white, followed immediately by thunder that seems to shake the very foundations of our shelter. I have to raise my voice to be heard over the noise. Good thing we got off the water when we did. Skye nods, pushing wet hair back from her face. Despite our quick retreat, we're both soaked from the initial downpour, and I try not to notice the way her tank top clings to her or how the storm has brought color to her cheeks. The space under the bridge is intimate, maybe 10 feet across, with a low ceiling of weathered planks. We're standing close together on the small patch of dry ground, close enough that I can see the gold flecks in her green eyes when lightning illuminates the shadows, close enough to catch that hint of vanilla sent even over the smell of rain and river. I love storms like this, she says, tilting her head back to listen to the rain pounding overhead. The power of it, the way it changes everything in minutes. There's something almost primal in her expression, a wildness that matches the weather outside. She's completely in her element here, unguarded in a way I've never seen before. You're not worried about flash flooding? I ask, though I'm watching her face more than scanning for rising water levels. Are you? She turns those green eyes on me, and there's a challenge there, like she's testing whether I'm the kind of person who lives cautiously or the kind who embraces the unexpected. Should be, I admit, glancing toward our beached kayaks. But no, this stretch drains well, and the storm's moving fast. See, you're not as predictable as everyone thinks. The comment catches me off guard. Everyone thinks I'm predictable? Reid Dawson, the reliable one. Always prepared, always safe, always does the right thing. She's teasing, but there's something else in her tone, something that suggests she's been watching me more closely than I realized. Lightning flashes again, closer this time, and in the brief illumination I see her expression clearly. There's no mockery there, no dismissal. Instead, there's something that looks almost like curiosity, like she's trying to figure out who I really am beneath the reputation I've built. Maybe I don't want to be predictable, I say, surprised by my own honesty. No. The rain continues its relentless drumming above us, creating a cocoon of sound that makes this conversation feel separate from the real world. What do you want to be? It's such a simple question, but it hits something deep that I don't usually let myself examine. What do I want to be? Not what my father expected, not what the town needs, not what makes the most business sense. I don't know, I say finally. Someone who chooses his own path, maybe. Someone who takes risks for the right reasons. The admission hangs between us in the storm-darkened space, more vulnerable than anything I've shared in years. Skye studies my face in the flickering light, and I wonder what she sees there. That's not predictable at all, she says quietly. Another flash of lightning. Another crash of thunder, and suddenly the space between us feels charged with more than just the electricity in the air. The storm rages around our small shelter, but inside this pocket of relative calm, something is shifting. Something that has nothing to do with the weather and everything to do with the way Skye Morgan looks at me like she's seeing someone entirely different from the person she thought she knew. The rain pounds harder, sealing us into this moment, this conversation, this growing awareness that maybe we've both been wrong about each other from the start. The storm shows no signs of letting up, but somehow the deafening noise has become background music to our conversation. Skye has settled onto a piece of driftwood that's wedged against one of the support pillars, and I find myself leaning against the stone foundation, close enough that our knees almost touch. "So what's the most unpredictable thing you've ever done?" she asks, and there's genuine curiosity in her voice, like she actually wants to know. I have to think about it. Probably telling my brother exactly what I thought about him walking away from the family business. "You have a brother?" Something in her expression shifts, becomes more alert. "I didn't know that." "Had." I correct automatically, then catch myself. "Have. Jake's still my brother. He just doesn't live here anymore." The words come easier than I expected, maybe because the storm makes this feel separate from real life. Like confessions made in this small shelter don't count against me later. "He was supposed to take over with me," I continue. "Dad always talked about Dawson and Sons river tours, plural. Jake was better with people than I ever was, had this natural charisma that made clients feel like they were his best friends within 5 minutes. What happened? College happened. Jake went to study business, came back full of ideas about expansion and modernization and corporate partnerships. I can hear the old frustration creeping into my voice. When Dad got sick, Jake saw it as an opportunity to completely restructure everything. Wanted to bring in investors, franchise the operation, turn it into something bigger. Lightning flashes again, illuminating Skye's face as she listens. There's no judgment there, just attention, and it encourages me to keep talking. I said no. Told him we were keeping things the way Dad built them, honoring what he'd created. I run a hand through my damp hair. Jake said I was being stubborn and short-sighted. Said I was choosing nostalgia over progress. And he left. Took a job with some adventure tourism company out in Colorado. He sends a Christmas card every year, but that's about it. The admission sits heavy between us. I've never told anyone the whole story before, never admitted how much it hurt to watch Jake walk away from everything we've been raised to value. "Do you ever wonder if he was right?" Skye asks quietly. The question surprises me. About what? About expansion. About taking risks. She's watching my face carefully, like she's trying to read something there. "You said you wanted to choose your own path, take risks for the right reasons. Maybe Jake was just doing that before you were ready to." I want to be offended to defend my choices and Dad's legacy, but there's something in her tone that makes me actually consider the question instead of dismissing it. "Maybe," I say finally, but it felt like he was trying to erase Dad before he was even gone. Like everything we'd built wasn't good enough for him anymore. Or maybe he was scared, Skye suggests. Maybe walking away felt easier than staying and watching your father get sicker. The insight hits harder than I expect. I've spent 3 years being angry at Jake for abandoning us, but I've never considered that his leaving might have been about fear rather than ambition. I never thought about it that way. Sometimes running feels safer than staying and fighting for what you want. There's something wistful in her voice, like she's speaking from experience. "Trust me on that one." We sit in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the rain. The storm seems to be moving past us, the thunder growing more distant, but neither of us suggests leaving our shelter. "Thank you," I say finally. "For what?" "For listening. For not telling me I should call him or that family as everything or any of the other things people usually say when they hear the story." She smiles, and it transforms her whole face. Though I have to say, this is the longest conversation we've ever had without one of us getting defensive. Probably helps that we're trapped here with nowhere to run. She laughs, a real laugh that bubbles up from somewhere genuine, and the sound does something to my chest that has nothing to do with the storm. Maybe we should get caught in thunderstorms more often. "Skye, Her name comes out rougher than I intended, and she must hear something in my voice because her laughter fades and her eyes go serious. We're sitting close enough that I can see the raindrops caught in her eyelashes, close enough to count the freckles across her nose. The air between us feels charged with more than just leftover electricity from the storm. Reid. She says my name like a question, like she's asking permission for something. And then she's leaning forward, closing the small space between us, and her lips touch mine soft and tentative and perfect. For a heartbeat, I'm too surprised to respond. Then something inside me unclenches, some careful control I've been maintaining for 3 years, and I kiss her back. She tastes like rain and possibility, like every risk I've been too careful to take. Her hand comes up to rest against my chest, and I can feel my heart beating against her palm, probably giving away exactly how long I've been thinking about this moment. When we finally break apart, we're both breathing hard. Skye's eyes are wide, like she's as surprised as I am by what just happened. That was unexpected, she says softly. Good unexpected or bad unexpected? Instead of answering, she kisses me again, and this time there's nothing tentative about it.
Chapter 5. Skye? The drive home feels surreal after everything that happened under the bridge. My lips still tingle, and every time I catch sight of myself in the rearview mirror, I see a woman who looks thoroughly kissed and slightly dazed. I should be floating, should be replaying every moment of those stolen kisses and the way Reid looked at me like I was something precious he'd been waiting his whole life to find. Instead, a familiar knot of anxiety is building in my chest with every mile that separates me from the river. By the time I pull into my driveway, the weight of reality has settled back on my shoulders. I sit in my truck for a moment, staring at the small cabin I've been renting since I moved to Juniper Falls, trying to remember who I was this morning before Reid Dawson's vulnerability made me forget every lesson I've learned about keeping my guard up. I grab the mail from the box and trudge inside, already dreading what I'll find. Bills, mostly. The equipment loan payment notice I've been avoiding. Insurance renewal that I know has gone up again. I spread the papers across my coffee table and check my email on my phone. There's the reminder from my accountant about quarterly taxes that I've been putting off opening. I do the math I've been avoiding. Even with the tours I have booked this month, I'm cutting it close. Dangerously close. One significant cancellation could put me behind on everything. The reality of my situation hits like a cold splash of river water. While I was kissing the competition under that bridge, getting lost in blue eyes and gentle touches, my business was still hanging by a thread. My dreams were still one bad month away from crumbling. I lean back against my couch cushions and close my eyes, but instead of Reid's face, I see David's. My ex-fiancé from Charlotte, who used to tell me I was being too cautious with my corporate job, too afraid to take risks, who encouraged me to dream bigger, reach higher, trust that everything would work out. Right up until the moment things got difficult and he decided he needed someone more stable and practical for his future. "You're a dreamer, Skye," he'd said the day he moved out, "and I need someone with both feet on the ground." The memory stings even now, 3 years later. I'd been planning to leave my corporate job anyway, had been talking about it for months. But David's departure accelerated everything, made me feel like I had to prove something. To him, to myself, to everyone who thought I was too much of a free spirit to build something lasting. So I'd cashed out my 401k, bought a pile of secondhand kayaking gear, and moved to the first small town that felt like it might welcome a river guide with more enthusiasm than experience. And now here I am, 3 years later, still trying to prove I belong, still fighting to build something that won't disappear the moment things get challenging. My phone buzzes against the coffee table, startling me out of the spiral. "Had a great day today. Thanks for listening. About Jake. Would you like to grab dinner sometime this week?" Reid. I stare at the message, and my heart does this stupid hopeful flutter before reality crashes back in. Reid Dawson asking me to dinner. Reid, who has everything I'm still fighting for. Reid, whose business success makes my struggles look even more pitiful by comparison. What was I thinking this afternoon? That we were having some kind of meaningful connection? That a few kisses under a bridge could bridge the gap between his established success and my precarious dreams? Maybe he was just being polite. Maybe he felt sorry for me, the struggling newcomer who's been trying so hard to fit in. Maybe I completely misread the situation, let my own loneliness make more of those moments than they actually were. The thought makes my stomach clench with embarrassment. How many times have I made this mistake? Getting emotionally involved when I should be focused on survival? Letting my guard down just when I need it most? I delete the message without responding. Then I gather up all the bills and shove them back into their envelopes. I can't deal with the numbers tonight, can't face the reality of how close I am to losing everything I've worked for. But I also can't afford to get distracted by blue eyes and gentle touches and the fantasy that Reid Dawson could be anything more than competition. I learned that lesson with David, the hard way. When things get tough, people leave. When the going gets challenging, even the people who claim to care about you start looking for safer, more stable options. And right now, things are definitely tough. My phone buzzes again. Another message from Reid. This time, I don't even look at it before deleting it. I have a business to save, and that means keeping my focus where it belongs, on building something that can survive without depending on anyone else. The phone call comes Tuesday morning while I'm staring at my coffee, still replaying every moment under that bridge. Hi, this is Janet Patterson calling about our group tour scheduled for Thursday. I grab a pen, grateful for something that feels normal and businesslike. Yes, Mrs. Patterson. 8 people, half-day tour. I'm looking forward to it. Well, that's actually why I'm calling. There's an uncomfortable pause. I'm so sorry, but we're going to have to cancel. The pen slips from my fingers. Oh, is everything all right? We can reschedule if... No, it's not that. It's just another pause. My friend Margaret did some research online. She found all these incredible reviews for Dawson River tours, and honestly, they sound more established, more experienced. We decided it would be safer to go with them instead. The words hit like a physical blow. I gripped the phone tighter, trying to keep my voice professional. I understand. I really am sorry. Margaret showed me their website, and they have all these testimonials about safety and expertise. 5-star reviews talking about how knowledgeable and professional Reid Dawson is. We just felt more comfortable with someone who has that kind of reputation. Reid. Of course. No problem at all, I manage. I hope you have a great time. I hang up before she can apologize again, then sit staring at my cold coffee as the implications sink in. 8 people at $75 each plus tips, $600 minimum. Money I was counting on to make this month's equipment payment. Money that's now going directly to Reid's business instead. After the call, I spend the rest of Tuesday and all of Wednesday avoiding everyone, especially Reid. When his name pops up on my phone Tuesday evening, I delete the message without reading it. Same with the one Wednesday morning. I tell myself I'm being smart, protecting my business and my heart from further damage, but by Thursday morning, I feel like a coward hiding in my own town. I'm at the boat launch early, loading gear for a solo client who wants to practice his roll technique, when I see Reid's company van pulling into the parking area. My stomach drops, but there's nowhere to hide. I focus on my equipment, hoping he'll be too busy with his own clients to notice me. Then I hear a voice I recognize. We're so excited for this. Margaret's been talking about it all week. I look up to see Janet Patterson climbing out of the van, followed by 7 other people I was supposed to be guiding today. The Patterson Group. My former clients now hanging on Reid's every word as he starts unloading pristine equipment with that easy confidence that comes from never having to prove you belong. The sight hits me like a physical blow. Watching Reid help Mrs. Patterson adjust her life jacket, the same Mrs. Patterson who apologized profusely while explaining that Dawson River tours just seemed more established, makes something crack open in my chest. Reid glances up and sees me standing there with my second hand. For a moment, our eyes meet across the parking lot, and I see surprise flicker across his face, followed by something that might be guilt. Or maybe that's just wishful thinking. I turn back to my own client, a nervous accountant from Asheville who's determined to master his Eskimo role before his next big river trip. At least someone still trusts Free Skye Kayak Adventures to provide quality instruction. Ready to get started, Mr. Walsh? I ask, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. But as we're launching, I can't help overhearing Reid's safety briefing for the Patterson Group. His voice carries across the water, warm and reassuring as he explains the route they'll be taking. The same route I had planned for them. The water's running perfectly today, Reid says. We'll see some beautiful wildlife, and I'll share some local history as we go. Everyone should feel comfortable and safe. Safe, of course. Because Reid Dawson is the safe choice, the reliable option, the guide with the spotless reputation and decades of local knowledge. I guide Mr. Walsh through his warm-up exercises, trying to focus on his technique instead of the sound of Reid's laughter mixing with excited chatter from my former clients. But when we surface after a particularly successful roll attempt, I see the Patterson group paddling past in the distance, their bright rental kayaks looking like a parade of everything I'm not. That's when Reid appears beside my kayak, having apparently left his group with an assistant guide for a moment. Skye. His voice is careful, uncertain. I've been trying to reach you. I am treading water, suddenly grateful that Mr. Walsh is practicing on the other side of the launch area. I've been busy. We need to talk about what happened on Saturday. About us. The word us makes my chest tighten. There is no us, Reid. There never was. Hurt flashes in his eyes. That's not how it felt under that bridge. I gesture toward his group, now a distant cluster of yellow and red dots on the water, especially when you're guiding clients who are supposed to be mine. Reid follows my gaze, and understanding dawns on his face. The Patterson group. They canceled with you. Tuesday morning, I confirm, hating how bitter I sound. Funny timing, don't you think? Skye, I had no idea. Save it. The words come out sharper than I intended, all the hurt and humiliation I've been carrying for 3 days finally boiling over. You think this is the first time? That the Pattersons are the only clients who've decided Dawson River Tours is the safer choice? Reid goes very still in the water. What are you talking about? I'm talking about 3 years of watching potential customers choose you over me. 3 years of being the second option, the backup plan, the guide people settle for when you're booked solid. My voice cracks slightly, and I hate myself for it. I'm talking about being stupid enough to think that maybe, for once, someone would choose me first. Skye, but Saturday was just a reminder, wasn't it? That no matter what happens between us, no matter how I feel, you'll always be Reid Dawson, hometown hero with the perfect reputation, and I'll always be the newcomer struggling to prove she belongs. Reid's expression has gone from confused to something that looks almost stricken. You think that's how I see you? I think that's how everyone sees me, including you. I start paddling toward shore, suddenly desperate to end this conversation before I say something even more humiliating. I think Saturday was a mistake and we should both pretend it never happened. That's not what I want. His voice is quiet, but it carries across the water, stopping me mid-stroke. When I turn back, there's something raw in his expression that makes my chest ache. What you want doesn't matter, I say, though the words feel like glass in my throat. This is reality, Reid. Your business versus mine, your reputation versus my desperation. There's no room for anything else. There could be. No. I shake my head, firm and final. There couldn't. I paddle back toward Mr. Walsh without looking at Reid again, but I can feel his eyes on me as I rejoin my client. Reid has his own group to catch up with downstream, and I have work to do. Everything okay? Mr. Walsh asks, noting my tense expression. Fine, I manage, forcing a smile. Let's work on that roll technique.
Chapter 6. Reid. I'm still reeling from my confrontation with Skye when I pull up to Ben Holloway's ranger station. Her words keep echoing in my head. 3 years of being the second option, the backup plan. I had no idea that clients were choosing me over her. Never considered that my success might be coming at her expense. Ben's office is exactly what you'd expect from a park ranger. Maps covering every wall surface, field guides stacked on every available shelf, and a coffee maker that's seen better decades. He looks out from his computer when I knock on the open door, and his expression immediately shifts from friendly to concerned. Reid, you look like you've been wrestling with a bear and lost. Something like that. I slump into the chair across from his desk. Got a few minutes? It's about Skye Morgan. Ah. Ben leans back in his chair, understanding flickering in his eyes. I wondered when you two would finally have it out. Have it out? She thinks I've been deliberately stealing her clients. Thinks I'm some kind of hometown golden boy who gets everything handed to him. And you're surprised by this because the question catches me off guard. Because it's not true? Because I've never done anything to hurt her business? Intentionally, Ben corrects quietly. You've never intentionally done anything to hurt her business. He gets up and pours 2 cups of coffee, choosing his words carefully. Reid, you're a good man, but you've also lived your entire life in Juniper Falls. Your father built Dawson River Tours from nothing, and you inherited not just the business, but the reputation, the trust, the benefit of the doubt. He hands me a mug and settles back into his chair. Skye Morgan showed up 3 years ago with secondhand equipment and a dream. No local connections, no family legacy, no built-in customer base. And she's been fighting for every single client ever since. The inside hits like a physical blow. I didn't know clients were canceling with her to book with me. I believe you, but that doesn't change the reality of her situation. Ben takes a sip of his coffee, studying me over the rim. You care about her. More than I probably should, given how she apparently sees me. How she sees you or how she's afraid to see you. What's the difference? Reid, think about it from her perspective. She spent 3 years building something from scratch, always competing with your established reputation. Then she has this amazing day with you, lets her guard down, maybe starts to think there could be something between you. And the very next week, she loses another group of clients to your business. But that has nothing to do with... It doesn't matter. Ben cuts me off gently. Logic doesn't always win when fear is driving the bus. And Skye's scared. Scared of losing her business, scared of not belonging, scared of getting her heart broken by someone who represents everything she thinks she can't have. So what am I supposed to do? Apologize for being successful? Of course not. But you might consider that proving her wrong is going to take more than words. Meaning? Ben leans forward, his expression serious, meaning that if you really care about Skye Morgan, you need to show her that you see her as more than competition, that you value what she's built, that you respect who she is. And how exactly do I do that when she won't even talk to me? I don't know. Ben's honesty is both frustrating and refreshing. But I do know that fear makes people do stupid things. It makes them push away the very thing they want most because they're convinced it's going to hurt them anyway. I stare into my coffee, Ben's words settling like sediment in my mind. She said there was no room for anything between us. That it was my business versus hers, my reputation versus her desperation. Is that what you believe? No. The answer comes immediately from somewhere deeper than logic. I think she's exactly what this town needs. What I need. I think she's brave and passionate and stubborn, and I think she's convinced herself that caring about me is a luxury she can't afford. Then maybe you need to show her it's not a luxury. Maybe you need to show her it's a necessity. As I drive home, Ben's words echo in my head. She thinks I represent everything she can't compete with. But what if I could show her that I don't want to compete with her at all? The idea that's been forming crystallizes into something that might actually work. Something that could show Skye Morgan exactly how much I value what she's built. It's risky. It's probably crazy. And it might blow up in my face. 24 hours later, I'm standing in Natalie's kitchen while she stares at me like I've lost my mind. You want to organize a what? She asks, setting down her coffee cup. A Twilight paddle event. Tonight. Open to anyone in town who wants to join. I pull out the notes I've been scribbling since yesterday. But here's the thing. I want it to be about Skye, not me. Ben, who's leaning against the counter, raises an eyebrow. Explain that. She's an incredible guide. Passionate, knowledgeable, connects with people in a way that makes them fall in love with the river. I look between them, hoping they can see what I'm envisioning. What if we organized an evening tour that showcased her as the expert, made her the featured guide? Natalie's expression shifts from skeptical to intrigued. You're talking about putting her front and center. Exactly. I've got the logistics, boats, safety equipment, but the tour itself, the experience, that's all her. There's just one problem, Ben points out. She's not speaking to you. How exactly are you going to get her cooperation? I take a deep breath. I'm not asking for her cooperation. I'm asking for yours. For the next hour, we hash out the details. Natalie will put out word through her photography networks and social media that there's a special Twilight Wildlife Tour happening tonight, led by river guide and local expert Skye Morgan. Ben will handle the safety permits and help promote the event through the ranger station. But what if she doesn't show? Natalie asks as we're wrapping up. Then I'll look like a fool, and she'll have missed an opportunity to show this town exactly how much she knows. I shrug, trying to appear more confident than I feel. But I think she'll show. She cares too much about the river to stay away. By late afternoon, word has spread through Juniper Falls like ripples on water. Natalie's done her work well. Social media posts highlighting Skye's expertise, mentions of rare evening wildlife viewing opportunities, been casually mentioning to hikers that there's something special happening at sunset. I spend the hours before launch time setting up at the boat launch, arranging kayaks and safety equipment with meticulous care. My hands are busy, but my mind keeps wandering to Skye. Is she hearing about this? Does she realize what I'm trying to do, or does she think it's some elaborate setup to humiliate her? The first participants start arriving just as the sun begins its descent toward the western ridge. Mrs. Patterson shows up with her friend Margaret, a family from the next town over, college students from the environmental program. By 6:30, there are nearly 20 people gathered at the launch, all asking the same question. Where's our guide? I check my watch, fighting down the panic that's been building all day. Skye is nowhere to be seen.
Chapter 7. Skye. I've been hiding in my cabin for 3 days when Hazel Elliott shows up at my door with the kind of determined expression that means I'm about to be steamrolled by a woman who taught 3rd grade for 40 years. Skye Morgan, you're coming with me, she announces, not bothering with pleasantries. I'm not really up for company right now, Miss Elliott. Hazel, she corrects, then gives me a look that probably made countless children confess to stealing cookies. And I'm not asking. There's something you need to see. Put on something suitable for the water and meet me in the car in 10 minutes. I'm really not. 10 minutes, Skye. Trust me on this one. Something in her tone tells me that arguing will be futile. I quickly change into clean clothes and pull my hair into a neat braid, then follow her to her ancient Honda. The drive takes less than 10 minutes, but Hazel keeps up a steady stream of chatter about anything except where we're going. When we pull into the boat launch parking area, I see something unexpected. Cars. Lots of them, and people clustered around the launch, looking excited and expectant. At least 20 people, all gathered around kayaks arranged with military precision. What is this? I ask as we get out. That's when I hear Mrs. Patterson's voice. I'm so excited for this. I've been telling everyone about how knowledgeable our guide is. Our guide? My feet slow as understanding begins to dawn. Excuse me, a college student with a camera approaches us. Are you Skye Morgan? We're here for the Twilight Wildlife Tour? I stare at her. I'm sorry, what tour? The special evening paddle, she explains enthusiastically. Natalie Quinn posted about it. Said you were going to show us wildlife along the river only visible at dusk. My environmental studies group drove down from Asheville for this. I look around the crowd with new eyes, noting the expectant faces, the excited chatter. That's when I spot Reid standing off to the side near safety equipment. He's not in the center of the group or giving instructions. He's just there, watching, waiting. Our eyes meet and I see something that looks like hope mixed with terror. He organized this, all of it, but he's positioned himself as support staff while making me the featured attraction. Skye, Mrs. Patterson appears beside me. Oh, wonderful. Margaret and I were so hoping you'd be our guide tonight. We've heard such amazing things about your tours. Part of me wants to flee, but another part, the part that fell in love with this river, is already assessing the crowd and planning the best route. This is incredible, the college student continues. I read that you know all the secret spots where herons feed at dusk. I can feel the weight of expectation, but for the first time in days, it doesn't feel crushing. It feels energizing. These people came because they wanted to learn from me specifically. Reid did this. Somehow, Reid Dawson organized an entire event to showcase my expertise instead of his own. All right, I hear myself say, my voice growing stronger. Let's talk about what we're going to see out there tonight. The transformation is automatic as I step into the role I was born to play. I move through the crowd, introducing myself, assessing experience levels, explaining what they can expect. The magic hour starts in about 20 minutes, I tell them, falling into the rhythm of a safety briefing. That's when the day shift of wildlife settles down and the evening shift takes over. If we're quiet and patient, we'll see things most people never witness. As I help people into life jackets and assign kayaks, I catch glimpses of Reid in my peripheral vision. He's not directing or managing. He's just making sure everyone has what they need while I work. When I pause to organize my thoughts, I find him standing nearby with a clipboard and a soft smile. Thank you, I say quietly, the words barely audible over the excited chatter. He just nods like he understands exactly what I mean. Ready when you are, he says, and something in his tone tells me he's talking about more than just the tour. I look out at the 20 people who came here specifically to learn from me, then back at Reid, whose blue eyes hold none of the competitiveness I've been so afraid of. Only support, only belief in what I can do. All right, everyone, I call out, my voice carrying clearly across the water. Let's go see what the river wants to show us tonight. 2 hours later, as the last of the participants load their cars with excited chatter about everything they've seen, I'm still buzzing with the kind of energy that comes from doing exactly what you were meant to do. The tour was magical. We saw a great blue heron fishing in the shallows, a family of river otters playing near the fallen log, and more species of evening birds than I've ever spotted in a single paddle. But more than that, I watched 20 people fall in love with this river the way I did 3 years ago. That was incredible, the college student tells me as she packs up her camera. I got photos of species I've only read about in textbooks. Thank you so much. Mrs. Patterson hugs me goodbye, promising to bring her book club next time, and the family with young children asks if I do educational tours for schools. By the time the last car pulls out of the parking lot, I have 3 new bookings and a waiting list for my next evening wildlife tour. I'm loading the final kayak onto the trailer when I realize Reid is nowhere to be seen. The equipment is organized, the launch area is clean, but his truck is still in the parking lot. Something draws me back toward the water's edge, past the main launch area to the quiet bend where willows trail their branches in the current, the same spot where we put in during the cleanup, where everything started to change between us. I find him there, sitting on a piece of driftwood with his hands clasped between his knees, staring out at the water. The last light of evening catches the surface of the river, turning it into a mirror that reflects the deepening sky. Hiding from your own success? I ask softly. He looks up, and there's something vulnerable in his expression that makes my chest tight. Wasn't my success. That was all you out there. I settle onto the log beside him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his skin but not quite touching. Why did you do it, Reid? He's quiet for a long moment, watching the current carry fallen leaves downstream. Because I wanted you to see what I see when I watch you work. That you're incredible at this, that you belong here just as much as anyone. The words hit somewhere deep in the part of me that's been fighting to prove I belong since the day I arrived in Juniper Falls. I thought we were competitors. All this time, I thought. We were never competitors, Skye. At least, not to me. He turns to face me fully. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you that for 3 years. Something in his tone makes me look at him more closely. In the fading light, his face is serious, almost hesitant, like he's about to say something that could change everything between us. Skye, I need to apologize. For what? Tonight was perfect. You gave me something I never could have built on my own. Not for tonight, for not making my feelings clear before, for letting you think that what happened under that bridge was just some impulse, some moment that didn't mean anything. He shifts closer, and now I can see the gold flecks in his blue eyes, because it meant everything to me. My breath catches. Reid, I'm not good at this, he continues, his voice rough with honesty. I'm the guy who plans everything, who thinks before he acts, who probably should have told you months ago that I've been falling for you since the day you showed up in Juniper Falls and decided you were going to make this place home. Falling for me? I manage, my heart doing something complicated in my chest. Completely. With your passion for this river, with the way you light up when you talk about something you love, with how brave you are. He takes a shaky breath. With the way you make me want to be braver too. I stare at him, processing words I never thought I'd hear, seeing emotions in his face that I'd convinced myself I was imagining. What do you want, Reid? You, he says simply. Not as competition, not as a challenge to win, but as a partner. Someone to share this river with, someone to build something beautiful with. He gestures toward the water, where the evening light creates patterns that shift and change with every ripple. This place is big enough for both of us, Skye. More than big enough. I look out at the river, at the way the current moves around obstacles instead of fighting them, at how the water finds its way forward no matter what stands in its path, and suddenly I understand what Reid is trying to tell me. Partners, I repeat, testing the word. If you'll have me. If you're willing to try again, knowing that I'm not your competition, and the guy who wants to see you succeed so badly that I'll organize surprise tours just to watch you shine. The last of my defenses crumble like a riverbank in spring flood. All this time, I've been so afraid of losing what I'd built that I never considered I might be able to build something even better with someone else. Yes, I say, and the word comes out steady and sure, like a promise made to the water itself. Reid's face transforms, hope and relief, and something that looks like joy all mixed together. Yes? Yes to partners. Yes to trying again. Yes to whatever this is between us that I've been too scared to name. I reach for his hand, threading our fingers together. Yes to seeing what we can build together. He brings our joined hands to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to my knuckles. I was hoping you'd say that. Reid. Yeah. Next time you want to tell me how you feel, you don't have to organize an entire community event. You can just use words. His laugh is warm and rich, echoing across the water. Noted, though I have to say, watching you work tonight was worth every terrifying moment of wondering if you'd show up. I lean into him, letting myself feel the solid warmth of his shoulder against mine. I almost didn't, if it hadn't been for Hazel. Remind me to send her flowers. She'd prefer chocolates. Good chocolates. Good chocolates. Chocolates it is. We sit in comfortable silence as full darkness settles over the water, watching the river carry the reflection of the first stars downstream. Somewhere in the distance I can hear the splash of a beaver tail and the haunting call of a loon. So, Reid says eventually, partners. Partners, I agree, and something about the way the word sits between us feels like the beginning of everything I've been afraid to want. The river flows past, constant and ever-changing, carrying us toward whatever comes next.
Epilogue. Reid, Juniper Falls, 1 year later. I adjust my tie for the third time, hands shaking slightly as I stand beside the minister at the makeshift altar. Behind me, the river flows gently past the spot where Skye and I had our first real conversation, where we discovered the heron rookery, where everything began to change. The scene looks like something out of a fairy tale. Kayaks line the banks, filled with wildflowers and trailing ribbons. Floating lanterns bob gently in the shallows, and garlands of mountain laurel frame the wooden arch that Ben built specially for today. Every detail reflects the life Skye and I have built together. Wild, beautiful, and perfectly imperfect. Breathe, man, Jake murmurs from beside me, straightening his own tie. My brother flew in from Colorado 3 days ago and hasn't stopped grinning since he arrived. She's not going to change her mind now. How do you know? I whisper back. Because I've seen the way she looks at you, like you hung the moon and taught it to shine. He clasps my shoulder. Besides, have you seen what she did to our business plan? That woman is definitely in this for the long haul. He's right about that. Morgan Dawson, River Adventures, has been booked solid for months. Our combined expertise creating something neither of us could have built alone. Skye's passion for wildlife education paired with my safety protocols and local connections has turned us into the premier adventure tourism company in 3 counties. But more than that, we've become partners in every sense of the word. The music starts, a simple guitar melody played by one of Skye's college students, and I forget to breathe entirely. Skye appears at the far end of the petal-strewn path, her arm linked through Hazel's. She's wearing a flowing dress the color of sage leaves, with wildflowers woven through her auburn hair and her grandmother's pearl necklace catching the late afternoon light. She's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. As she walks toward me, her eyes never leave mine, and that smile, the one that's been lighting up my world for the past year, grows wider with each step. When she reaches me, Hazel places Skye's hand in mine with a satisfied nod. "Take care of each other," Hazel whispers, then takes her seat in the front row with tears already streaming down her cheeks. The ceremony passes in a blur of promises and laughter and the kind of joy that makes everything else fade away. When the minister finally says, "You may kiss your wife," I cup Skye's face in my hands and kiss her under the canopy of cottonwoods, surrounded by everyone we love. "Mrs. Dawson," I murmur against her lips. "I like the sound of that," she whispers back, then pulls me in for another kiss that makes our guests cheer. Later, as the reception at the community center winds down and guests begin to drift away, Jake raises his glass one final time. "To Reid and Skye," he says, his voice carrying clearly across the water, "for proving that the best partnerships aren't about competing, they're about complementing, and for showing me that sometimes the scariest thing you can do is exactly what you need to do." He pauses, looking directly at me. "Wouldn't have missed this for the world, little brother. Thanks for not giving up on us." I raise my own glass, throat tight with emotion. "Thanks for coming home." As applause echoes across the river, Skye squeezes my hand and leans into my side. "Good speech." "He learned from the best," I say, kissing the top of her head. "You should have heard what he said to me this morning about second chances and forgiveness." Sounds like someone else I know." I step away from the dancing to refill my glass of Hazel's famous lemonade when I notice her deep in conversation with an older gentleman I don't recognize. He's distinguished looking, probably in his 70s, with silver hair and the kind of weathered hands that speak of a lifetime spent outdoors. "I just don't know how I'm going to manage it alone this year," the man is saying, shaking his head. "Eleanor and I co-hosted the stargazing night for 15 years. Now that she's moved to Florida to be near her grandchildren, I'm not sure I can handle all the logistics myself." "Oh, Walt," Hazel says, with the kind of sympathetic smile that should come with a warning label. "That does sound like quite the challenge." It is. Eleanor always handled the educational component. She was so good at explaining constellations to families with children. Walt takes a sip of his lemonade, oblivious to the calculating look in Hazel's eyes. "I can manage the telescope setup and the technical aspects, but organizing activities for different age groups, that was always her specialty." "You know, it's funny you should mention that," Hazel muses. "I might know someone who would be perfect for something like that." Walt raises an eyebrow, immediately wary. "Oh?" "Lovely woman, very organized, excellent with people. She's new to the area, but she has a real appreciation for the stars. I think you two would work wonderfully together." I nearly choke on my lemonade, recognizing the signs of Hazel Elliott in full matchmaking mode. Walt Avery has no idea what's about to hit him. "Well," Walt says slowly, "I suppose I could meet with her, discuss what the event involves." Wonderful. Hazel beams. I'll give her your number. I think you'll find she's exactly what you've been looking for. Walt nods, still looking slightly bewildered by how quickly he's been recruited. I appreciate the help, Mrs. Elliot. The stargazing night means a lot to this community. Oh, I know it does. And I have a feeling this year's event is going to be the best one yet. As Walt wanders off, probably wondering what just happened, I can't help but grin. Some poor, unsuspecting woman is about to get the Hazel Elliott treatment, and Walt Avery is about to discover that resistance is futile when it comes to Juniper Falls' resident matchmaker. Reid, Skye's voice calls from across the reception area. Come dance with your wife. I turn to see her standing near the makeshift dance floor, still in her wedding dress but barefoot now, her hair loose around her shoulders and her eyes sparkling with happiness. The lanterns in the trees cast a golden glow, and strings of lights twinkle overhead like captured stars. She holds out her hand to me, and I go to her willingly, leaving Walt to his fate and Hazel to her schemes. Whatever romantic drama is about to unfold in Juniper Falls, it can wait. Tonight is about Skye and me, and the promise we've made to love each other as surely and steadily as the river that brought us together. Tonight is about forever. I take her hand and spin her into my arms, and we dance under the stars while the nearby river carries our laughter downstream toward whatever adventures await us next.
And this has been Riverbend Rendevous, written by Susanne Ash. Copyright 2025 by Susanne Ash. Production copyright 2025 by Susanne Ash. Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe if you want me to put more of my books on YouTube. Visit my website at www.susanneash.com for more of my books or find me on Amazon.